And we're back. Okay. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Never Go Against the Family, our family business podcast here at the University of Northern Iowa's Family Business Center. I'm Dan Binkin, and today I am joined by Ashlee Vieregger. She is an attorney and financial advisor with Foster Group in West Des Moines. I'm going to let her introduce herself a little bit more here in a second. But first, I just want to tee up our topic today is going to be on philanthropy, the P word. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we can use philanthropy as a tool, as a gateway, Ashlee's word, to create some stronger family relationships around money. And so, Ashlee, could you please kind of introduce us into this topic of philanthropy, how you see it used with families, and maybe before that, even give us a little background on yourself.
You bet. Thanks, Dan. It's great to be on the podcast. I'm Ashlee Vieregger. I'm a senior lead advisor at Foster Group. We're a financial planning and wealth management firm in West Des Moines, Iowa. And in the work that I do with client families, I get to help people make just good decisions about money, whether those are small decisions or whether those are large generational decisions. So I feel very blessed to come alongside a number of families of all shapes and sizes as they're trying to do well with what they have built and accomplished. A lot of them are very generous. A lot of very generous families that we work with, which is wonderful. And the philanthropy, the P word, it really is the gift that keeps on giving, because it's such a powerful opportunity for families to make impact in their communities, to support the causes and individuals that resonate with them. And there are also benefits within the family. Dan, you mentioned that philanthropy can help build stronger relationships within the family, because let's face it, not a lot of families and not a lot of people are great about talking about money with their loved ones. It's one of the hardest topics for generations to discuss with one another.
Yeah,
People would
let's.
rather people would rather talk about taxes and death and planning their own funeral than having to discuss a money conversation with a parent or a child. And so that has some interesting effects on not only family harmony and relationships, but how we prepare the next generation of young people in our family to take over, whether it's leading in the business or managing an inheritance or just having financial acumen. When we don't talk about it, it's a big missed opportunity. And so I love how philanthropy can help us bridge that gap between doing something that seems hard and also something that we're motivated to do because we're so generous. It's a win-win.
So, I mean, is it a minority of families that you feel like you work with where money can be a cumbersome topic, or is most families struggle with this topic, at least in the generational, transitional, wealth preservation, stewardship of money sense that maybe you're working with them from? I don't know. Can you address that a little bit?
Sure. I think more families than not struggle with it to some degree. Nobody feels as equipped as they would want to be. And the fear of failure stops a lot of people from having even beginning stage conversations. Nobody wants to be bad at something as important as talking about money. And we all think that we should naturally be good at it because we handle money and we interact with it every day,
Right.
buying gas, buying groceries, making a financial decision. Almost every facet of our life involves some financial decision making component. So, on one hand, we feel like we know a lot about it from our learned and lived experience. And then when we start to sit down and talk about it, it feels, for a lot of people, really uncomfortable. And that can be kind of jarring, because how can we be bad at something that we touch and interact with every day? So I think a lot of families struggle with it on some
Is it?
level.
I mean, this isn't. We're not going to dwell on this for the pod today, but some of that uncomfortableness is about the relationship between your values and your goals with money and how that you're not just talking about what a dollar is, but there's a lot of subjective parts of talking about money with family. I'm guessing that's where some of that uncomfortableness comes from.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good research on why talking about money is so difficult.
Okay.
Uh, One author that I love her work on this, her name's Kathleen Kingsbury, and she wrote a book called Breaking Money Silence. It's a fabulous read. It's kind of geared at an advisor, but if you're, in a family, especially in a family business owning family, you would want to pick up this book. It's a great read. And she
Okay.
says that a lot of people a lot of people struggle to talk about money because they're raised with a belief deeply seated, held and formed in their formative years of childhood that talking about money is wrong. And a lot of us pick up that belief from our first money teachers, who are our parents and our grandparents. Through no fault of their own, people grow up with the belief that talking about money is rude or gauche
Hmm.
or impolite or taboo. And then they worry about having those conversations with their own family members. And so when you put together that kind of negative belief along with a negative emotion, like this is wrong to talk about and I'm going to be bad at it, the resulting behavior is that you don't do anything about it. And you just
Sure.
say, well, I'll broach this conversational topic when I am more ready, when my child or my grandchild is more ready at some future date. And so then that future date never comes and silence persists, which is pernicious for families. And so when we think about families who are generous, talking about philanthropy can be one of the easiest ways, one of the most natural ways, one of the most comfortable ways to begin having better money conversations with multiple generations of your family, because it's such an uplifting topic. We feel good when we're making donations to individuals and causes that resonate with us. And so many families actually give money away to set the example of generosity for younger people in their family.
Hmm.
60% of people, US Trust did a study on donors in the United States, particularly among high net worth families. And they found in their research that 6 out of 10 families, one of their main giving motivations is to set the example of generosity for other family members. And then they
Okay.
go on to say that, 3 out of 4 families, 75% of people, they donate to causes that have touched them either personally or someone in their family. So giving is very personal, but only 1 in 5 families, 20% of people, actually talk about that giving with other family members. So even though we're doing it to set an example and we're giving to causes that have personally either touched us or an immediate family member, we're only talking about it, 20% of the time. Seems like a big missed opportunity to have a better conversation and talk about money in a way that feels more comfortable and less awkward or feel fearful.
Okay. I know one thing that I've found that sets you guys apart at Foster Group from other advisors maybe is how you deal with the family side of managing family wealth and knowing that is just as critical as what investments they're picking and those kinds of things. And so when you have a family that maybe has a bit of dysfunction, or we all do, frankly, how do you actually use philanthropy then as that tool to kind of bring people together?
Sure. Sure. So when we're sitting down with a family and they have goals that are beyond the married couple, right? We want to get our kids involved in the family business, or we want
Yeah.
to prepare the next generation for what they will inherit someday. We want to get them ready and we want them to learn things that you know, we had to learn trial by fire. Nobody taught us our own, money knowledge. We don't want the same for our children or our grandchildren. We want them to be more prepared than we are or we were.
Mhm.
And that's very natural. And so then when we sit down with families like that, a lot of times what we suggest is a family meeting. This falls
Okay.
under kind of an umbrella of family governance.
Yep.
How do we organize the family discussions around important topics like managing the family wealth, transitioning leadership and ownership of the business? How do we communicate our wishes and intents around our estate plan and legacy? all of those topics are really big and weighty. And when we're beginning on a conversational journey for the first time, we don't just cannonball into the deep end. We want to wade into shallower waters to get us acclimated before we're going to go in the 10 feet
Yeah.
deep zone. And so starting with philanthropy can be a wonderful way to bring families together for a multi-generational wealth conversation, essentially, for the very first time. And so one of the things that we'll do when we sit down with a family is we'll try to choreograph or organize an agenda around giving, impact, philanthropy. And one of the ways that we may start is by doing a values exercise as a family. So it's such a cool idea. It's really a deck of cards. You can get these on Amazon for $25, and it's a deck of cards. It's a physical object, and each card has a value printed on it, like integrity or loyalty
Mm-hmm.
or determination, and a short description of what the value is. And so we ask families to do this exercise individually. First, we go through the entire deck. It might have 50 cards in it. And we say, isolate your top 10 or the key 10 that are the most important to you, and reflect on, why that is. Maybe even share one of them that made the top 10 with the larger group.
Okay.
And then we ask them to do kind of a cut down to maybe the top 5 values or the top 3 values that, and it can be very difficult because all of the cards have good words on them. They're all positive characteristics that are embodied on these cards. And by the end of the exercise, each person isolates their top 3 or their top 5. And then what we can do is share that among the group. And you'll find that there's a lot of commonality between families. There might be several values that are shared in common by multiple family members. And that's great. That can form the basis for, kind of a shared or a family value. But
Mm-hmm.
then there's also a lot of differences or um, dispersion between what family members hold as an important key value. And so how you honor the differences is as important as what you do with the similarities among the family, because you want to make sure that each member is feeling heard and respected and valued, even if what they hold dear and value is different from the family member, sitting right next to them. So this is a great exercise that then can inform as a family, if we hold these 5 key values, how does that show up in the giving, the gifts, the generosity that we're doing? And are the organizations that we're supporting in alignment with those, key individual values and those key shared family values? So it can be just a wonderful journey of not only individual discovery among the family members, but of the family group itself. These things can really bring families closer and help with some of those multi-generational relationship deepening. It's a great opportunity to do an exercise like this. So yeah, values exercise is great. And then what you do with it, I think, can have huge impact on how the family approaches their generosity from a more strategic lens. A lot of families that we work with,
Mm-hmm.
they give based on what they're asked to do, what resonates with them, what they've always done. If
Yep.
there's a personal cause that has touched them. Um, and for a lot of people, generosity begins and ends with those few things, which is wonderful, which is fantastic. But for those families who want to go the extra step and be a little bit more strategic and intentional, marrying your individual and family values with your giving and your generosity, it's such a powerful combination.
Okay. So the first step is getting through that kind of what are our values? What is our, where do we have agreement, alignment? Where do we not have agreement and alignment, and why? Maybe, and coming to, some level of common ground around that. Um, and then using that information, we know value these certain things highly to actually drive some of our more to be more strategic with our giving. That's interesting because I think you mentioned to me one time. Some folks are like checkbook givers. I think that was a term you used. As
Yeah,
far as
totally. I
Is
get the envelope in the mail from the Animal Rescue League, and I gave last year, and they're asking me to renew my gift. So yes, I whip out my checkbook and I write the donation check and I stick it in the mail. That's a wonderful way to approach generosity. But it tends to be a little reactive, right? You waited for the envelope with
right.
the to arrive in your mailbox, and then you responded. So in contrast, doing the values exercise and aligning your personal or family values with your giving, that would be more of a proactive approach. I have these 5 key values. I want to benefit organizations that align with these values in my local community, statewide, regionally, nationally, internationally, individually. So there's just a lot of um, opportunity to be really intentional and strategic with giving.
Do you find
Don't
that
hand
that,
me
or do you find that the vehicle then of philanthropy helps to actually break down some of the differences and the lack of trust, maybe, or uh, cohesiveness that families may be lacking? I mean, I think that's what we've been talking about here, so I'm assuming you're going to say yes, but I just wanted to know if you could touch on that as far as how it helps diffuse the Jerry Springer moments, maybe.
Yes. Well, family dynamics, I mean, we could have another podcast just on family
Sure.
harmony and family dynamics. It's a fascinating topic. I think how you approach the common values and how you approach the differing values, both are equally important. Because making sure that folks of all generations and viewpoints and beliefs feel included is key to getting them to come back to that table for some of those other conversations that I mentioned.
Yep.
So if you're sitting down with your multi-generational family group for the first time and doing the values exercise with the goal of translating that into strategic family philanthropy, if the family values a few different key um, values,
Mm-hmm.
and there's some dissonance between some of the family members who have some different cards that they've isolated as important to them. If you are dismissive of those differences, I think you're less likely to bring that person back to the table for future conversations. So I think making even the differences positive is key. It's easy to rally around the similarities
Right.
across each individual family member as, our family believes in these 5 things, but we also honor that our family is not a monolith and each person within the family is not a carbon copy of the person sitting next to them. And just being open to learning about why someone next to you might hold a different value key from what you hold. Um, it's not a debate, and it's not, I need to convince you that my values list is the superior or correct list. It's that's so interesting that your lived life experience has led you to value this thing that I didn't even think of and didn't make my list at all. Tell me more about that so that I can know and understand you better. So just
Yeah.
honoring those differences, I think, can make people a lot more willing to come to the table and be involved participants in some of these hugely important conversations. So treat those with delicacy and respect if you want to continue to keep that engagement in family conversations high.
I feel calmer now just having listened to you say. Ah, okay.
Take a breath.
The make the differences positive. Different doesn't have to be negative, Dan.
That's right.
Okay, I love it. Okay. So you get them through that piece of things, some values, exercises, and I'll try to share. I know exactly what values cards you're talking about. I'll make sure that we post a link to those with the pod.
Yeah, they're great. Buy a
Yeah,
couple of decks and bring them out around Thanksgiving or Christmas time.
yeah, when
It doesn't
everybody's a little
When
lubed up.
everyone's together,
Yeah,
it doesn't take very long. There's instructions, I think, written on a card inside of the deck. You don't have to be a veteran facilitator to have an effective exercise, and it can be it can be a powerful exercise. I guess the other piece of it is document, right? Write
sure.
down, what each family member's values are. And then in 5 or 10 years, it's worth repeating the exercise, right? Because as our lives unfold, and as our personalities
Yeah,
take shape, and
experiences.
particularly for young family members, their value set may shift or evolve as they go through life. So it's kind of interesting. It can be an interesting progression.
Okay. So with the time we have left here, thinking about what that next step is once we've got those values identified, we've introduced the topic of philanthropy with it, obviously. What does a family do next then to kind of continue down that path of building off of that and continuing to build trust and buy-in from family members and that kind of a thing. Where do we go next from there?
You bet. Two ideas for families who are embarking on a more strategic philanthropic strategy for their family giving.
Okay.
Number one is to involve the young people in your family as early as possible. Your kids and your grandkids don't need to be age 30 to start learning about family giving and the importance of generosity.
Okay.
And so, what I'll recommend for kids ages 5 to 25 is the gift of giving. It's an exercise where a parent or a grandparent is going to give the children or the grandchildren an assignment of giving. So, maybe it's a specific dollar amount. It's maybe the kid's age times 10. So, for a 5 year old, it's $50. For a 10-year-old, it's $100,
Mm-hmm.
and so on. And so, the idea is assign the child a generosity requirement. Child, I'm going to give you $50, and the requirement is that you give it away to an organization. And your parent can help you do the research, but I expect you to come back in, 4 or 6 weeks' time and tell me which organization you chose and why. And so this works really well in like Thanksgiving, Christmas timeline.
Oh
Give the
yeah.
assignment over Thanksgiving, reunite over Christmas to hear about which charity each child or grandchild chose and why. And then do it again and again. This can be an annual tradition that can really bring the family together. And it's especially powerful during the holiday season, the season of giving. And
Sure.
it gets kids accustomed and exposure to giving from a young age, which is important. So that's one idea.
I
The
love it.
second idea for the adults in the room who are trying to embark on a more strategic approach to their family philanthropy is to do an audit of your current giving based on those values that you hopefully have explored for yourself and other members of your family. So I mentioned if you hold a few key values, and let's say, they all pertain to, um, you want to support social services and, basic human needs. Your values have indicated that those kinds of organizations are the most important for you to support.
Mm-hmm.
Go through your annual list of giving, pull out your tax return from last year or your checkbook with all of those register entries of what you gave away, and map whether those organizations are aligning with any of those key values that you discovered through that values exercise. And you'll probably find some overlaps and some holes, right? You may be supporting a couple of organizations that do something similar to one another. And then you may discover that, well, social services is really important to me, but I'm not really giving to any organizations that support those things in my community. And so it can offer you some insight into, hey, I've got this box over here checked 3 times. Maybe I only need to check it once or twice.
Sure.
But also, I have this other area of interest and value that I'm not doing anything to support yet. So it can help you kind of better align those values with your actual donation, philanthropic giving. And then also think about the scale or the area of impact that you're looking um, to do. I don't mean scale in the terms of size, I mean in terms of like geographic location.
Oh,
So
okay.
a
Okay.
lot of folks want to benefit their local community. Of course, that makes perfect sense. We
Yep.
want those in our local area to flourish and lead good lives and support those who have more challenges doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other areas of impact that are important to you statewide regionally, nationally, globally, or just individually. And a lot of this is actually the work of our founder, Jerry Foster, who's built really a matrix or a visual to illustrate if these areas of giving and these regions of giving, how do we map out our existing generosity and what opportunities arise as a result of plotting each and every gift, on that matrix from individual to international on one side, and then from essentially Maslow's hierarchy of needs from
Sure.
food, shelter, all the way up to, um, you know,
A new
spiritual.
Corvette for Dan Benkin, something like that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
personal and spiritual growth, arts and culture, social services. Almost all organizations can be isolated in terms of what they're doing to help and where they're doing it. And so then
Okay.
plotting your own giving on that spectrum or matrix is super informative to kind of show you, hey, here's my current areas of impact and what changes or additions would I like to make based on what my key values in giving are.
I love it. Okay. I think we should have you on again sometime to talk about what's next after that. But maybe for today we'll end it with there. Um, I love how you've kind of laid out philanthropy as a way to kind of connect family back together that maybe has had some weaknesses, challenges, conflicts, chair throwing, whatever it might be. And I think it's something any family could use, regardless if you're wrapped around a business as an identifier for your family or not. So, again, our guest has been Ashlee Vieregger. She's a lead consultant with Foster Group in West Des Moines. Ashlee, any last maybe parting ideas for families listening, thinking about the topic of philanthropy?
You bet. For families who are just beginning on their giving journey, it is not only okay, it is ideal to start small. Don't think that you have to have this whole thing solved in one meeting. Your idea is to make progress step by step, bite by bite. You can't eat the apple in one gulp. So when you start with small, achievable, attainable steps, that helps you build momentum that will carry you forward into some of the more deep and advanced level of conversations with your family. So start with the values exercise. That's one thing, one step you can take.
Mm-hmm.
Start with having the children or the grandchildren have an amount to give away during the holiday time. That's one small thing that you can do to build stronger family bonds while you're doing something incredibly meaningful like being generous,
Yeah.
with your wealth to benefit those people and causes that are important to you. So start small. That's the best way to begin.
Okay. I mean, that's the best way to begin with lots of things. I'm glad you re-emphasized that. I think it helps make it not look so like such a cumbersome mountain to climb, right? So,
Yeah, it can be overwhelming to think about it all at once. And the fear of taking on too much to begin with stops a lot of people from even taking that first beginning step. So break it down into small pieces, and that will serve you very well.
all right, cool. Thanks again for being our guest today, Ashlee. We greatly appreciate your wisdom and expertise with family businesses. Again, Ashlee Vieregger with Foster Group in West Des Moines. And thanks for being on with us today.
Thanks for having me, Dan. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Never Go Against the Family, a podcast produced by the University of Northern Iowa Family Business Center. You can find more information about the center, membership, and upcoming events at unifamilybusinesscenter.com. As Vito Corleone advises, never go against the family.